On a quiet afternoon, Mike was going about his day when something unusual caught his attention. A small cage, sitting on the back of a truck, held a tiny puppy inside. The moment Mike saw those big, sad eyes staring at him through the bars, his heart melted. The puppy's fluffy coat and the way it looked so lost and vulnerable sparked an overwhelming feeling of compassion in him. Without thinking, Mike knew he had to help. He approached the farmer, who explained that the puppy had been abandoned, left alone and unwanted. The farmer had tried to chase it off but couldn't bring himself to do anything more. The puppy had even caused some trouble by sneaking into a chicken coop, resulting in the loss of some chickens. With no other option, the farmer was ready to take the puppy to the vet and have it put down. Hearing this, Mike felt a rush of sadness and resolve. There was no way he could let that happen. He offered to take the puppy, to care for it, and give it a chance at a real life. As Mike held the puppy close, a deep bond began to form instantly. The feeling was undeniable. He wasn't just rescuing a dog, he was making a life-changing decision for himself. The puppy, who he later named Lucky, had a way of making Mike feel like he was doing the right thing. Walking home with the tiny pup in his arms, Mike couldn't help but smile. He knew that this was the start of something special, a new chapter that would forever change their lives. Mike had no idea at that moment how much Lucky would bring into his life. How the playful puppy would become more than just a companion, but a true friend and part of the family. It was the kind of bond that could only grow stronger with time, and Mike was ready for that journey. Mike's heart swelled with happiness as he welcomed Lucky into his apartment, making room for the playful puppy in his home. Despite the limited space, Mike was determined to make it work. He quickly set up a cozy spot for Lucky to sleep and allowed the little pup to explore his new surroundings. Lucky was full of energy and excitement, darting around the apartment like a tiny whirlwind. His wagging tail and puppy eyes melted Mike's heart every time they locked eyes. But it didn't take long for Mike to realize that having a puppy came with its own set of challenges. Lucky's playful energy was endless, and his curiosity often led him into trouble. He had a particular fondness for Mike's hats and hoodies, which were often chewed up, leaving Mike with bits of fabric scattered across the floor. First, Mike was frustrated, but he quickly understood that Lucky wasn't being malicious. He was just a puppy trying to learn about the world. With a deep breath, Mike decided that patience and consistent training were the way to go. Every day, Mike worked with Lucky, guiding him gently but firmly. He taught him basic commands, and slowly but surely, Lucky started to settle down. The mischievous pup began to listen more, learning what was acceptable and what wasn't. Mike's effort paid off as Lucky grew into a much more obedient and well-behaved companion. They started enjoying their walks together, with Lucky now following Mike's lead, and Mike began to see the bond between them growing stronger. But then, something unexpected happened. As the weeks turned into months, Mike noticed a surprising change in Lucky. The puppy wasn't just growing. He was growing rapidly, far beyond what Mike expected for a dog of his breed. First, Mike thought it was just a normal part of Lucky's development, but as the days passed, he began to wonder. Lucky's once small size was now dwarfing most other dogs of his age, and Mike found himself wondering what kind of dog he had really brought into his life. Something about Lucky's extraordinary growth didn't add up, and Mike's curiosity grew along with the dog. Little did he know, his life with Lucky was about to take a turn he never saw coming. As Lucky's growth continued at an alarming rate, Mike's concern deepened. What had once been a small and adorable puppy was now a massive animal, towering over most dogs his age. His fluffy coat had thickened, and his massive build was now clearly visible to everyone who met him. When Mike took Lucky out for walks, he noticed that people's reactions had changed from admiration to fear. On more than one occasion, strangers stepped aside as Lucky passed, eyeing him with caution, as if they were unsure whether he was a dog or something far more intimidating. Mike couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. This wasn't just a large dog. There was something different about Lucky. After weeks of debating, Mike finally decided to take Lucky to the vet. He hoped that the vet would have an explanation for Lucky's unusual size and behavior. As soon as they entered the clinic, the nurse's reaction was immediate. She took one look at Lucky, her eyes widened, and she let out a small, startled scream. Mike, who had been bracing himself for a routine checkup, was now more concerned than ever. The nurse quickly ushered them into another room, avoiding direct eye contact with the massive dog. Mike could feel his heart racing as he tried to calm Lucky, who, as usual, was more interested in sniffing the room than behaving aggressively. The vet arrived shortly after, her face a mix of curiosity and concern as she assessed Lucky's size. She took measurements and ran some tests, all the while making notes in her chart. Mike anxiously watched, his mind racing with questions, but he never expected what was to come next. When the vet finally spoke, her words sent shockwaves through him. "Mike, I have some surprising news," she said, her voice calm but serious. "Lucky is not a dog at all." Mike blinked, confused, and shook his head in disbelief. "What do you mean? He's been with me for months. He's a puppy. I found him abandoned. He's a dog, right?" The vet nodded slowly and looked at him sympathetically. "I'm afraid Lucky is a full-blooded Canadian black wolf, not a dog. The signs were there all along. His size, his coat, the way he behaves. He's a wild animal." Mike felt the ground slip from beneath him. His stomach dropped as the words sunk in. All this time, he had thought Lucky was just a very large, very unusual dog, but now the truth hit him like a ton of bricks. He had been raising a wolf, not a domesticated puppy. The shock was overwhelming. His beloved pup, the one he had rescued from an uncertain future, was not a dog at all. Mike felt like his world had been turned upside down, and he wasn't sure what to do next. How was he supposed to handle a wild animal in his home, especially when he had treated Lucky like a dog for all these months? It was a realization that would change everything he thought he knew about the bond he had formed with Lucky. Mike's world had been shaken to its core. Learning that Lucky was not a dog, but a Canadian black wolf, left him in an impossible situation. Living in a city with a wild animal, especially one as large and powerful as Lucky, was simply not an option. The authorities could not allow such a creature to remain in a residential area. Mike knew that the time had come for him to make a difficult decision. Keep his beloved wolf, or let him go. The thought of parting with Lucky was unbearable. Over the months, they had formed an unbreakable bond. Lucky wasn't just a pet. He was Mike's companion, his confidant. They had spent countless hours together, and Mike had never felt such a deep connection with an animal. From the first moment he had rescued Lucky, he knew their bond was special, and as Lucky grew into the massive creature he was now, their relationship had only deepened. Mike had grown to love the wolf like a member of his family, and the idea of giving him up was heartbreaking. Soon, the wildlife authorities were involved, and a wildlife inspector arrived to assess the situation. He was kind but firm, explaining that keeping a wolf in the city, no matter how tame, was not something the law could allow. The inspector emphasized that Lucky needed space, both physically and mentally, to live as he was meant to. The city wasn't the place for a wolf of his size and instincts. As much as Mike tried to argue, he knew deep down that the inspector was right. Lucky needed more than what the city could offer. The inspector gave Mike an ultimatum. Either he found a solution, or Lucky would be taken away to a wildlife sanctuary where he could live as a wild animal should. The thought of losing his wolf was devastating, but Mike knew he had to act. In that moment, Mike made a decision that would change everything. He would do whatever it took to keep Lucky. He would sell his house and buy a larger plot of land, somewhere far away from the restrictions of city life. Mike wanted to build a home for Lucky, one where the wolf could roam freely, where he could experience the space and freedom he needed to thrive. It would mean starting over, but Mike couldn't imagine life without his wolf by his side. With unwavering love and commitment, Mike took action. He sold his house, gathered his savings, and found a beautiful piece of land where Lucky could live out his days in peace. This decision was not just about creating a better life for Lucky. It was about their bond, and the lengths Mike was willing to go to in order to keep his beloved wolf. In his heart, he knew it was the right choice, even though it meant significant sacrifices. But for Lucky, Mike would do anything. Mike's determination was put to the test as he worked tirelessly to set up a new life for Lucky. After selling his house, Mike invested every penny of his savings into buying a large plot of land, one that would provide enough space for the wolf to roam freely and safely. The task ahead was enormous. Mike had to build a proper enclosure, one that would be both secure and spacious enough for Lucky's new life. The pressure was mounting. The clock was ticking, and the weight of responsibility bore down on him. Every nail driven, every fence post erected, felt like a step closer to a future with Lucky. But there was still so much to do. Despite the difficulty of the situation, Mike kept going, day in and day out. His heart was fully invested, and he wasn't about to give up on his best friend now. However, as his work gained momentum, Mike's story began to capture the attention of the public. News of the man raising a Canadian black wolf in a residential area spread like wildfire. On social media, Mike's bond with Lucky became an internet sensation. People were fascinated by their connection. Mike's unconditional love for Lucky and the way the wolf had bonded with him was undeniably heartwarming. Support flooded in from all over, but with the positive attention came criticism as well. Some believed that keeping a wolf in captivity was a mistake. They questioned whether it was ethical, if it was fair to Lucky, and whether Mike was truly doing what was best for him. But through it all, Mike remained resolute. The doubters only fueled his determination to get everything right. He knew what he had to do, and he wasn't backing down. He spent long hours working on the property, making sure every requirement was met. The construction of the enclosure was more than just a physical challenge. It was a race against time, a battle to keep Lucky by his side. When the day of the inspection finally arrived, Mike's nerves were at an all-time high. The inspector was back, and this time the stakes were higher than ever. If Mike had done enough, if everything was up to standard, Lucky would stay. But if the inspector found any flaws, the wolf would be taken away. Mike could barely bring himself to breathe as the inspector walked around the enclosure, inspecting every inch of it. He watched as the inspector scribbled notes on his clipboard, his face unreadable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the inspector turned to Mike with a smile. "It's good," he said. "You've done it. Everything meets the requirements. Lucky can stay." Relief flooded through Mike. Tears welled in his eyes as the weight of the world lifted off his shoulders. Against all odds, he had succeeded. He had built the perfect home for his wolf, and he had proven to everyone, including himself, that love and commitment could overcome any obstacle. Online, his supporters erupted in cheers. People from all corners of the world had followed Mike and Lucky's journey, rooting for them every step of the way. And now, the world could celebrate with them. Mike and Lucky were going to stay together. They had made it through the struggles, and now their future was secure. As Mike and Lucky settled into their new home, the bond between them grew even stronger. With the vast land and the natural surroundings, Lucky now had the space to truly thrive. The wolf was no longer confined to the constraints of a small backyard or the city, but instead, he had access to wide-open fields where he could roam, run, and play, just as nature intended. Mike spent every moment he could with Lucky, making sure his beloved companion felt at home and cared for. Together, they watched sunsets from the porch, went on long walks across their property, and enjoyed the simple, peaceful life they had worked so hard to create. But as Mike's life began to settle, something inside him stirred. A newfound purpose. Seeing how much joy and freedom Lucky now had, Mike realized he wanted to do more. He knew that Lucky wasn't the only one who needed a second chance, and that's when the idea of creating a sanctuary for animals in need was born. Inspired by his journey with Lucky, Mike set out to make his dream a reality. He started helping other animals, providing a safe haven for those who had been abandoned or mistreated. The sanctuary quickly grew, with Mike taking in animals of all kinds: dogs, cats, and even wild animals that needed a place to heal. Lucky's presence remained the heart of the sanctuary. He became the living symbol of perseverance, love, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Every animal that entered the sanctuary could feel Lucky's calming influence. He became a mentor of sorts to the other animals, teaching them that not all humans were bad, and that there was always hope for a better life. Lucky's playful demeanor and gentle nature set an example for the other rescues, showing them that love and care were possible, no matter their past. Mike's online supporters continued to follow his journey, offering donations, supplies, and their encouragement. The local community rallied behind him as well, understanding the immense impact he was making on the lives of these animals. Together, they helped create an environment where animals could heal and thrive, just like Lucky had. As the sanctuary expanded, Mike found himself connecting with more animals than he ever imagined. He became known as someone who would give anything to ensure that an animal's last chance at happiness wasn't wasted. Lucky's legacy lived on, not just in Mike's life, but in the countless animals that now had a chance at a better future, thanks to Mike's love and determination. Lucky, the once abandoned wolf, had transformed Mike's world in ways he never thought possible. He wasn't just a rescue dog or wolf. He was the beginning of something greater, a symbol of the incredible power of love, perseverance, and the bond between a human and an animal. And together, they would continue to make the world a little better, one rescue at a time. Mike stood on the porch of his new sanctuary, watching Lucky run freely across the land. His heart swelled with gratitude as he thought about how far they'd come. Just a few months ago, he had been a man with no plans to adopt a dog, unaware that rescuing an abandoned puppy would lead him to the life-changing journey he had now. He never could have imagined that a simple act of kindness would not only give Lucky a second chance but would also transform his own life. With Lucky by his side, Mike's world had completely shifted. What started as a small, heartfelt rescue had blossomed into a full-fledged mission. Mike was living his dream, surrounded by animals that he had helped save. His home was now filled with the love and laughter of animals he had given a second chance, and he couldn't help but smile at the thought of how fulfilling his life had become. Every day was a new adventure, and Mike was determined to continue his work, knowing that every animal he saved was a step closer to making the world a better place. But through it all, the most incredible part of Mike's journey was the unbreakable bond he shared with Lucky. The two of them had been through so much together. Mike had saved Lucky from being abandoned and euthanized, and Lucky had, in return, saved Mike from a life of uncertainty and loneliness. The love between them was a bond that couldn't be broken. Through adversity, they had found strength in each other, and their journey together was far from over. As they looked out over the sanctuary they had built together, Mike knew that their story was a testament to the power of love, compassion, and second chances. With Lucky by his side, Mike's mission was just beginning, and together, they would continue to face whatever challenges came their way, knowing that the love between them would always see them through. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales. Your support keeps us going.